Pocket like you stole it, Chapter 3. After the first page is tediously wasted by Morty talking to the audience out of nowhere and hating the one, Hippie says that the Council of Ricks have a taste for avoiding personal responsibility, and a need for entertainment, and a numbness towards violence. Morty comes to the desperate conclusion that if there's no Council of Ricks, all the Ricks on the planet will just stop bothering the Mortys. He didn't need this as an explanation. He could just turn on the Council of Ricks without needing extra motivation because they're the government and Ricks. Where's the Citadel of Ricks in any of this? I guess this whole story is just outside it. It turns out Hippie's a psychic, so he knows something embarrassing about Morty. And since Morty wants to fight the Council, he says aw geez and gives him a map. Morty suddenly realizes that he can't force the other Mortys to rebel along with him, because putting another Morty in harm's way would make him no better than a Rick. Yeah, good thing he realizes that finally. That's smart. Hippie says that he was just trying to show him the way off the mountain so he could leave because he's tired of wearing pants. And then Morty runs through the woods being delusional and recognizes a voice. Someone says that they've been over this and someone sleeps in the dog bed, non-laundry. It turns out that was Beth, which the dialogue made obvious to me by the tone. She sprays at Jerry with water amusingly. That is so their relationship. So I love this parody of it here. Morty calls her mommy, implying it's been forever since he's seen a Beth. That's tragic. Cause like, he knows that it's supposed to be his mother. So, of course he could still be a clone and just be given the memories artificially. She's unhappy and then happily greets him, just to say that she was hoping he wouldn't see his parents like this. Morty lampshades things, and the Beth reveals that she's a Jerry trainer, and Jerry battling isn't allowed in this reality, so they have to train in secret. Why is it not allowed? Ricks hate Jerrys. I guess it's only illegal because they never thought about it happening, and it's illegal for the same reason it is for any person. That, and I guess if it was legal, then all the Jerrys ever would be forced to do this because Ricks hate Jerrys. Like, a Rick could get away with getting rid of a Jerry if he hired another Rick to get rid of him for him. He insults Beth and asks where she even got all those Jerrys. Oh crap. She then reveals that she stole the Jerrys from a Jerry daycare. She just walked into the daycare saying that she's there to take them home, and they all wanted to come with her. If the writer thought to have Morty ask why she was able to do this, he should have known better than to write it. It would have a system preventing Jerry theft. But I do like that we were actually given an explanation as to how she got all those Jerrys. Still, we just have to assume she has a portal gun. I guess she stole a spaceship of Rick's. Jerry asks if they have to fight, and she's insisting on telling herself that Jerrys can't feel pain. Even if she had a portal gun or spaceship, how would she know where to go? I don't know how she keeps believing in it when she's told it's rolling by Jerrys. She sends a swimming Jerry and wizard Jerry to fight each other like wimps, and she says unhappily that this is a mess and all Jerry fights suck. Would they? I mean, if someone really hates Jerrys, it wouldn't matter how they were fighting. They'd just be happy to see them get hurt at all. You'd think some Ricks would make a good audience for this. But I guess even a Rick would be too busy cringing at how bad they are at fighting. She says that they're very indie, and Morty snarks at what she means is that it has no quality control. I'm glad she just left it at saying whatever. She tells the Jerrys to all take a nap in a big tent. I love that they're happy about it, like a typical Jerry. Maybe they're brainwashed. But how would a Beth have access to brainwashing chip technology? How would the brainwashing chip affect a Jerry in the same way as a Morty? And then she reveals she's fine with that because there's a heater in there that says to not use it in a tent because of the dangerous fumes. So she's hoping they won't even wake up. This is shocking too, but it makes sense that she'd become this way out of guilt from kidnapping Jerrys to fight each other for no reason. But if she's feeling guilty for kidnapping them, she would just release them. A wrestling Jerry runs up to her calling her name and gives her a paper, and is realistically exhausted from running, and says that she said she missed scrapbooking, so he brought her some paper. It's so like Beth to be like this to a Jerry. The only thing that's off about this Beth is that she's fine with capturing tons of Jerrys to fight each other. She says that she had said she'd miss making valuable memories, and scrapbooking would imply she had anything worth scrapbooking about. Then she sees a poster calling him Evil Morty. Well, he is being rebellious, so I guess that's the logic in them calling him that by mistake. Maybe they know he's not really Evil Morty, and they're just doing that to motivate people to capture him more. They're just doing it out of spite. Beth then guilts him for not telling him this because she wants the cash reward. And he lies that he's not a Morty all of a sudden. I guess he's just that desperate that he tries it anyways. So he says he's a Morty type Jerry, and that's why he's with all the other Jerrys. I wish he said that he was shapeshifted to look like a Morty. That would be more plausible than saying this. He says that he looks like this for the same reason Wizard Jerry looks like a wizard. Beth doesn't buy it, being respectably smart, and says sarcastically, "Big surprise," because the Jerrys are gullible. A Jerry says that no one would lie about being a Jerry, and in this reality, they're classified as a fungus out of spite. She says that if he's a Jerry, he'll fight another Jerry. Oh come on, it's just needlessly cruel of Beth to send out a muscular Jerry against anyone to fight them because Morty's a wuss, looks like her son, and it's so obvious that he's the strongest Jerry already, so why bother making them fight? Like, I guess she's purely doing it out of sadism, to have them get hurt. But at least I can imagine she does have a Jerry she really loves, and it has to be him. Morty surprisingly stays unafraid, I guess because he's just Jerry regardless. That's really brave. So he says that he'll bet he skipped leg day. I'm surprised this comic knows that meme, since it's not Sonic. And he tackles his legs to make him fall over while he's distracted and bites his arm, acting furious. I guess because even though this looks like his dad, he's just desperate to get rid of his pent-up anger. Out of nowhere, a laser hits them, and somehow the Jerrys are happy about this instead of scared. And they've been shot by Hunter, who of course came back to continue what he'd been doing before. He did want to follow Morty to others. And we already knew this Beth was really selfish, so it wasn't too crazy that she's fine with Rick. She always is anyways. Just like the first story, I guess it just wasn't enough for me to say about the story for me to feel like making a summary of it. Pocket Like You Stole It, Chapter 4. Hunter seems to have a problem with Jerry fighting, but fortunately explains himself, saying that he can't stand seeing all those Jerrys with her. He says he respects Beth, reminding us of their normal dynamic, fortunately. And then he says he needs that Morty back, just for her to sick the Jerrys on him. Sadly, the Ricks make an excuse to not save him somehow, because they say that this is a Morty Jerry like last time, and are upset that Beth was humoring them earlier because she was being dishonest. So she finally tells them to go because Hunter's running away with Morty, and fortunately he gets knocked in the head by the club of a Bigfoot Jerry, and apparently this didn't actually knock Hunter out. Which I thought would be the case, since he had spinning stars drawn above his head, as he's immediately able to threaten the Jerrys. You'd think the spinning stars would imply that he'd have a concussion and be a bit more concerned with that than this. He says that all he's needed is a reason and they just gave him one. So he shocks them all at once with his big super scope. And Beth says she's gonna have to bottle feed them again. Huh? He's able to find out where Morty's hiding because of something backfiring from the previous issue where he hung out with Hippie, as he smells a drug scent on him. And for some reason, instead of rolling away or attacking him, he just wastes time saying it's good for his gut, so he gets blasted because of his own stupidity. He wakes up around a bunch of other Mortys in cages, and a confusingly normal-looking Rick tells a Tamagotchi Morty that he's in timeout. He reveals that he's not good with it because he doesn't really care. And then it beeps, and someone says that he can stop beeping and he knows about the Pocket Ricks. So, wait, somehow the Morty we know was put inside a Tamagotchi? I guess the screen is a portal to a pocket dimension. Morty says the Hippie told him about how much Pocket Rick sucked, and he can help free everyone from the council. Why would he ever trust that Morty could do that? He's just a Morty. Rick says that being the very best is an unreachable goal, being refreshingly cynical about it compared to the other Ricks, who you think would be cynical and not bother with it then. He says that they'd push them, make them fight and work all day. Morty says that it's not any better now because he's still stuck following someone's stupid rules because the Council of Ricks makes them do what they want. So why were they all happy about capturing Morty's instead of reluctant if they were just following orders? That doesn't explain it at all. I thought it was their idea. Rick says that's like a social contract, and he admits that because he has nothing to gain in this, he has a point. It wouldn't be like a Rick to just follow a social contract out of obligation. Morty immediately gets his hopes up and says that they can free all of the Pocket Mortys and get rid of the Council. Rick reminds Morty that unchipping a Morty turns their brains to banana pudding, rather than thinking he can just make a chip disabler. Morty says that he doesn't think that's true because he knows that he's okay after his chip fell out. But it was loose. It never really worked in the first place. Again, I guess he's just desperate enough to believe whatever he needs to. Rick's briefly suspicious because he came to this conclusion, and he's able to forget about it because Morty said hypothesis. So he's just like, don't hurt yourself from that word, Morty. He interestingly reveals that the Council is of course formed of the most stable, boring Ricks, the Noble Ricks, which are a bunch of killjoys. Which means they might be convinced through a long, boring argument, or at least distracted. So he shoots out a portal and says they're gonna fight through mutated Morty guards. Morty wishes he was told about those guards before the portal gun was shot, and Rick lampshades that he's wasting his time complaining about how Ricks always are, being self-aware of how he's not considerate about the anxieties of others. Then Morty naturally assumes a really buff Morty is one of the mutated guards, but it's really just a rare Morty. And Rick somehow expects Morty to knock it out successfully, I guess out of desperation. But he really should just bring a tranquilizer gun. Actually, why doesn't every Rick just do that to capture Mortys, instead of making Mortys fight to weaken the Morty? Morty gets picked up, but the CrossFit Morty just talks weirdly in an extended way instead of actually wanting to attack him somehow. Wouldn't he be brainwashed to want to fight instead? So Morty says he doesn't want to do that because he's full of carbs, and he kicks him in the face. So Rick catches him. I guess it makes sense that he wouldn't need to weaken it, because of course a Rick would make every Pokeball a Master Ball. That explains why we didn't see anyone break out of them. Rick says that the CrossFit's gonna love the Morty daycare, where there's crappy food and tons of hard labor, because he likes whatever makes him stronger. I guess because he's brainwashed too. Rick hopes that all the mutant Mortys have a gluten intolerance to take advantage of. And I don't know why Rick is happy that one of the guards hit Morty and told him to get him. It's too bad there's gore in this, making it all hard to watch. He gets slapped and kicks pants-on head Morty in the face, and then has to deal with a butt-face Morty by slapping him. Already the fight's over. They have paper-thin defense. And then we cut to Armhead Morty, who catches the rock he threw. Morty says he's all out of ideas because of this. Rick then shoots the guard with a ray gun to kill him. And Morty asks what took him so long. Fortunately, as I was wondering that myself. He's only not opposed to this because it saved his life. Rick says that he waited because this is cheating. And it's lampshaded that he thinks only this is unethical about battling. He's a Rick. He'd be fine with cheating. He tells Morty to talk to the Council, and Morty reveals that he's at least smarter than Jerry in Breaking Bad because he feels like he's being thrown to the wolves. It's weird that Rick says the Council of Rick has crippling insecurity when Ricks are always known for being arrogant. I guess he's just projecting. Talk it like he stole Chapter 5. Morty tells the Rick that he needs a portal gun and a microversal battery, fully expecting to die. The other Rick says that he's not lying, and he's just gonna talk to the Council of Ricks. And if he goes in there with weapons, it'll just show them that he's ready to fight like a battling pet. Then his pager goes off, and it turns out his cat Morty's about to have kittens. This is part of why this arc is confusing. If he's one of the Ricks that keeps pocket Mortys, why is he the one trying to get Morty to the Council of Ricks to make them stop forcing Ricks to catch them? Morty doesn't have a pass key, and one of the guards is apathetic enough to tell him that a scatter beam will open the locks up, as most of the Ricks that aren't supposed to be here break in with one of those. Morty says that the guards would try to stop him, and they say they're mostly here for killing, and that's not a killable offense. Rick for some reason says no to giving him a scatter beam, and when Morty says Tamagotchis are for babies, Rick says there's no surer way to make yourself sound like a giant baby than to decree that anything is, quote, for babies. Rick says that he made it clear that what it would take to get through this challenge was intellect. So this causes Morty to kick him in the weak spot and steal his scatter beam, since he was too stupid to just give it to him for some reason. Morty goes into the door saying staff only and into the fire exit, and then sees a ton of kidnapped Mortys in collection boxes. I don't get why they're not kept unconscious in them though, or why they're okay with doing this to someone who's their grandson biologically. Too bad they couldn't give this role to other characters. Too bad they couldn't explain this as the Ricks being brainwashed. It makes sense if it was just all the Ricks being brainwashed into doing this for one Rick who wants to catch them all. I'm really confused right away when the Council Rick grabbing Morty says that these are all the known Mortys, and some are clones and some are the real thing. Morty's threatened with a bodybuilder robot who came here to fight Mortys and chew gum. The Rick says that he's not here to fight him. He's here so Morty can get all of his action star dialogue out of his system before he's put in the tank. Why would they want him to get all out of his system instead of just doing it right away? Since he keeps being mistaken for evil Morty somehow, despite his clearly noble mission and appearance, he says that it'll be whatever he thinks he is, and hits the Rick with the ray gun. He runs away and gets tasered and falls into a trapdoor, and the Council of Rick says that it's just a giant taser that can take whatever form he finds appealing. It only looked like Gwendolyn because he referenced her earlier, so she was first on his mind. Normally it'd be Jessica. Morty says he wants to go home and eat a pizza for what feels like his entire life. So he is a clone. Surprisingly, the Ricks are apathetic enough to tell him he can go. And when he says that all the Mortys are better off being allowed to fight even if he gets them killed, that should be a reason he's called Evil Morty because that's pretty selfish. He naturally isn't convincing the Council, and he's dragged away by the guards. He tries to think like Rick and say that they don't want to trap him here. He says that his Rick is a special kind of twisted and he's looking for a reason to rebel against the Council. Then the Council Ricks have to remind him that there can't be a rebellion because of the manipulation chips in the Mortys. That's not what he said at all. Morty was talking about Ricks rebelling because their Mortys were taken. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. That's what he said. He says he's been chipped and unchipped several times. So, every time a Rick was wasted when he loaded it, so it didn't brainwash him? That's pretty convenient. And it turns out there's been a chip hidden on Morty, because apparently, his Rick's been controlling him in secret all along. So as a result of thinking he's being controlled, and so nothing he decides to do is his fault, Morty goes completely psycho on the Ricks. And pretty soon there's a ton of Mortys with Rick. Rick says that he did that all on his own. And he has to tell him that if he was a lab hamster he'd be dead by now. That chip was just part of an old, obsolete MP3 player he glued to him. Well, the Purge episode proved that's not really out of character for a Morty to go psycho like that. He did have a really hard story arc. So they get into the spaceship, and Morty says that this means he really is a fighter after all. So after seeming to have a sweet moment with him, saying he's a real fighter, Rick puts a chip in him so he can violently fight Mortys in the ring for Friday night in front of everyone we saw in the arc already. So he really wasn't trying to free the Mortys, and just wanted to keep them fighting and keep them all for himself. But since they all have brainwashing chips in them that would kill them if they were removed, well still, that doesn't mean he has to make them fight. Even he's not a good guy? Does that mean Crazy Cat Rick and Hunter Rick were robbed of their Mortys? Because it says all the Mortys. And nobody knows who the evil Morty is, at the point where he hasn't taken over the Citadel Ricks yet. So how would anyone capture him? Maybe they were mistaken about which person was the evil Morty. It makes sense that there could be multiple. Also, apparently there's a second Ant in My Eyes Morty, because this one's alive perfectly fine. Having the Rick that helped him out at the end look like the real Rick is just confusing because he can't be. This is never going to be referenced again. This can't be canon to the rest of the franchise if it has all the known Mortys captured and brainwashed by the Council of Ricks that Rick in the show overthrew and radically changed the Citadel of, and freed the Mortys. This arc was interesting enough that I read nearly the whole thing at once in one evening. So it definitely gets me invested. But the problem is that it's too dark without enough levity, even by this series' standards. It ignores the fact that throughout the franchise, Rick shows he cares about Morty, to the point where he once sacrificed himself for him in the show. It didn't even have a real happy ending, because the Mortys aren't sent home with Rick making a chip to disable and remove the brainwashing chips in them. He just keeps them all to have them fight. For fun, I guess. At least the arc tried to kind of explain the premise. The Council of Ricks is ordering the other Ricks on the planet to catch Mortys and battle them. Except they're all happy about it, not reluctant. And this planet always had people able to train and battle the wildlife just fine. Even though I'd expect chips and Pokeballs to only be a Rick invention. Wouldn't they be brainwashed by being captured in Pokeballs? Not by external chips? That'd be true to Pokemon. There was no real proper explanation for the premise. It just made a bunch of Ricks too evil to have this plot. And while it was interesting to see the other Morty's designs, some of them were too gruesome to be worth it, not actually funny. I don't know why tiers lists were never even mentioned.